All right, today we're going to do a quick lesson on a couple of different little entities. One's an NPC, one's a weapon, and one is an ENV or an environmental entity. So if you've played Half-Life, you may know that there's the 0-point gravity gun, and it's this thing right here, this guy. And it allows Gordon to pick up and move around physics objects. And if you get to the end of the game, the weapon actually gets upgraded so that it can grab organics as well. And so early in the game, though, all this does is it allows you to grab physics props. So if we put some physics props, let's go ahead and put a prop physics in the game. So any physics-enabled prop in the game, you would be able to pick up with this thing. So let's say I put in let's do like a chair. That should work. Physics prop, apply. All right, so let's go ahead and run this and take a look. So the difference between the regular Fizz Cannon or 0-point gravity gun or whatever they call it is the ability to handle organic objects versus just any object. So if we load up the game here and I pick this up, so see I can grab this chair, I can launch the chair, but this guy down here, it does nothing to him. Now it does sort of work against the Antlions. So let me get one of those guys out here. So it actually allows me to knock him over. But I've shot this guy many times and it doesn't actually kill him. It just kind of seems to flip him over on his back. Alright, so now let's switch it over to the Super Fizz Cannon by using this Enb Global here. And we'll take a look at the difference between the two. So now I'm going to go ahead and run it. So it's a pretty powerful weapon. They give it to you very late in the game. Alright, so you'll notice it's blue. And let's go ahead and trigger the Antlion. So you see now I'm able to grab the Antlion and it kills him. And then same thing with this Metro Police officer. Alright, so that is the Super Fizz Cannon. So it gives us the ability to grab organic objects. So we'll start out by setting this up. It's really simple. So I want you to drop in two items, two entities. So the first one is going to be the weapon Fizz Cannon. So come on over here and drop in a weapon Fizz Cannon from your objects. And then the second one is this right here, which is called an Enb Global. So again, go to your entity tool, come over here and drop an Enb Global on the ground for me. Now by default, this is just the regular old Fizz Cannon. It doesn't do anything special. There's no flags that allow us to enable the super capabilities on it. So we have to do it with the Enb Global. So the Enb Global sets like global status updates across the entire map. And there's several. So we'll look at a couple of them. We're only going to deal with the Super Fizz Gun, but you'll see that there are others that could be useful in the game. So Enb Global, so I'm going to give it a name. I called it Grav Gun. The initial state, I'm going to set it to on. If you want this on at the beginning of the game, we'll go ahead and set this on. The global state to set. So if you drop this menu down, you're going to see there's a whole bunch of global states for the game. Like, for example, Gordon is pre-criminal. So what this does is it makes it so the police officers and stuff won't attack you. You don't have to do AI relationships. This is pre-criminal Gordon in the game. There's a point in the game where the Antlions become the player's ally, and we can use that setting. And you can look through all these. The one we're looking for is Super Fizz Gun is enabled. Go ahead and apply it. And then finally on flags, we have to check the box that says set initial state. And that tells this Enb Global to go ahead and set whatever state that we put here to enable it. So now this will become the Super Fizz Gun rather than just the regular gravity weapon. All right, so once we've got that set up, you can go ahead and drop in some physics props and test it. But before we do that, let's take a look at one more thing that we have to do that's not like super obvious within the editor. So let's take a look at the color of this weapon here. All right, it's orange, right? So now let's go back into the editor. So let me recompile with our changes. Okay, so we're going to load up here. Now, what I want you to do is look at the weapon. It's orange, all right? But when I pick it up, it's blue. So what that tells me is that the prop in the game has the wrong skin. So if we go into our weapon here, so let's go back to the Fizz Cannon, you'll notice there's no setting in here for a skin. I don't know why they left this off. I have no idea. So what we have to do is we have to add the skin value to this object. So there's a little button here that says SmartEdit. And what this does is it turns the values of this model into like more easily identified kind of human values versus what you would see inside the settings for the model. So if you dig through the model settings, there's going to be a text file that's got all the settings. It's like a configuration file for the different models. And it gives us things like, for example, in textures, it tells it how shiny it is and how deep the bump mapping is and things like that. So all of these are actually expressed in a configuration file for the model. SmartEdit just puts in kind of easier to read explanations of these things. So if I turn off SmartEdit, you'll see, so these are like the actual programming values that they use in their configuration files. And you can see that they're a lot harder to read than this, where it says name, start fade distance, and then when I turn this off, these look more like variable names versus SmartEdit, which is, a little easier for us to read. So we're going to go to turn off SmartEdit, but the thing is we can add values to this. So we know that other objects in the game have a skin value. So I'm going to click add, and the new key is going to be called skin, and then the value is going to be 1. Now, how did I know it was 1? Well, I've done this a million times, but the actual reason for knowing it is when we look at an object, 0 is the starting point that we count from. So I know that if this object has more than 1 skin, 0 is going to be this one, right? Because the computers, they start counting at 0. So 0 is the default skin. So if this object has a second skin, I know that value is going to be 1. So 0 is this one. So if this object has another skin, it has to be 1. So I'm going to click OK, click apply, and it turns blue. All right, so now it's a Super Fizz Gun. I can turn SmartEdit back. You'll see that our added value up here looks a little different than the other ones, but it works. We can click on it here. We can't change it. We have to turn off SmartEdit if we want to play with it. All right, but that gives me the blue Fizz Cannon right there. So we'll click apply, and let's do one more compile just to make sure it worked. perfect. All right, reload. All right, and where is it? There it is. All right, so now on the ground, now we've got the proper blue skin. When I pick it up, it's blue. I can come over here, hit the trigger to get this animal to pop out of the ground. All right, awesome. So that is a super Fizz Can. So let's look at one more little entity today. This is an NPC that is fun to play around with, and it's the Antlion. So these guys right here, I always thought they kind of looked like the bugs on Starship Troopers, although I think this game predates that movie. Oh, excuse me. So Antlions are interesting. They go by sound. They can't see. So, but they have a unique capability of being burrowed in the ground, which allows them to trap the player. So when we drop in an Antlion, we see a big circle around them. That's sort of their hearing radius. But let's go ahead and look at this guy right here. So they have a feature on them. If you open up an Antlion, and if we scroll down, there's an option here under their values that says starts burrowed, yes. And so what this does is when the Antlion spawns into the game, he'll be hidden in the ground. And then we can use a trigger or a timer or whatever, some kind of a relay to get them to unburrow. So I named this guy Bug1 right here. I set his start burrowed to yes. And then we don't need to worry about any of these. You can leave them all default if you want. Now to get him to come out of the ground, what I did is I set up a trigger, just a regular old trigger once. And on the output, on trigger Bug1 unburrow. So what that'll do is he will pop out of the ground. All right. Now, with these guys, what we can do is if you create multiple copies of them using the same name, this one trigger can pop all these guys out of the ground. So we can make essentially traps for this guy. Next week I'll do a lesson on how to make them spawn endlessly from sort of like an anthill kind of thing. They don't use the normal NPC template. They have a special one for themselves. So I'll put a lesson together for that tomorrow, because these are one of the most interesting enemies because they're cannon fodder. They're really easy to kill, but they can fly. They can hide. They've got a lot of interesting capabilities, and they're kind of fun. There's two variants of them, one that spits acid. So we'll take a better look at these guys tomorrow, but I'm going to get you kind of started playing around with them today. So we can burrow them, and so you'll see here what I've done is I've done a shift, click and a drag, and I just put in a whole army of these guys. Now the thing is they all have the same name. They're all named Bug1. And I've got this trigger right here, trigger once, on trigger Bug1 unburrow. So now if I go ahead and compile this, all these guys are set to start burrowed, and when I hit the trigger, they should all pop out. All right, let me grab my weapon. All right, so no antlions. I can actually run around right where they're at. Like they're not coming out of the ground. But if I come over here and I hit this trigger, see their behavior fly a little bit. I think I killed them all. But they can fly, they attack. They're an interesting enemy. In the game, they're kind of considered cannon fodder. They're easy to kill, but nonetheless, fun. We'll play around with spawning them next week because, like I said, they require a little bit of extra work to get them to spawn. So that's it for today. Some interesting entities for you. Check the assignment to see what's due.